This episode contains information of a graphic nature that might not be suitable for some viewers and anyone under the age of 18. Viewer discretion is advised. All information in this program is known to be accurate at the time of recording. Any commentary by the host is for discussion purposes only. Anyone labeled a person of interest by the host or family has not been charged with a crime. All suspects charged with crimes related or unrelated to a case covered are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Opinions and views expressed by the host do not represent views of the families or sponsors of this program. 40% of homicide cases in the United States go unsolved each year. Many are not covered by mainstream media, and most of these cases go unnoticed by the general public. This is just but one of these stories. From Grimm Media, I'm your host, Steve Stone, and this is the Grimm Truth Podcast, Murdered and Missed. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Grimm Truth Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Stone. This is episode 30, Justice for Ella Crawley. This is one of many episodes that we are covering on our Murdered and Missed series. And before we get into this video, we sponsor this episode, the Grimm Truth Podcast YouTube channel. Please, if you haven't done so, subscribe to the podcast. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode of the Grimm Truth Podcast, whether it's missing persons cases, which we predominantly do here, and the murdered. Like, share, subscribe, get the word out. Our job is to try to get these cases out in the mainstream, get as much exposure as possible, and maybe somebody out there can help these families get to the truth. And as we continue to be a voice for the voiceless in search of that truth. So please subscribe. Now today's episode, again, we're discussing Ella Crawley, who was murdered in Winston-Salem. We have an interview that we did with her sister Melissa and Melissa's husband, who talk about just what a lovely person Ella was. You know, she struggled with mental health issues, and then out of nowhere, her life was taken from her by a monster. We will discuss the case as far as it goes from the law enforcement aspect, and how the family kind of feels that, well, not kind of, they feel that it was not handled right from the get-go, and you'll actually hear Melissa say that. So without further ado, let's get into episode 30 here as we discuss with Melissa the type of person her sister was, and just what a wonderful individual she was.
We grew up in a Christian home. My mother was a minister. Ella was just a very sweet young girl that eventually grew up and became a very sweet woman, still sweet. She worked, Ella worked at the age of from 16 on up until, I believe, in her 30s. She was a go-getter, but she did suffer from a mental impairment that she was, medicated for. She was into the church heavily. She, always trying to help someone, talking to them about the Lord, opening up her door for someone if they needed to sleep or something to eat. She would even help pay bills. She wasn't a party person. She wasn't into drugs or anything like that. She was really, really Christian girl. She stayed to herself a lot too. She didn't she wasn't out. She didn't socialize a lot. She didn't have very many friends. She had a few friends in the church and stuff like that, but she mainly stayed close to my mother and done things like that, just helping out, going to church, going to her little doctor's appointments, coming to our barbecues or whatever functions my husband and I were having. She was always there. I was close with her, and so was he.
If you followed us throughout last year, the one thing that we always had an issue with when it came to law enforcement and the cases were issues with mentally ill individuals. Now, I've said this before, I'll say it again. These individuals don't ask for the illnesses that they have. And in Ella's case, she had a stable, solid foundation. That she had people that were her stewards that looked out for her and did the very, very best that they could. And in this next segment, we discuss her illness and how the family was able to steer her with regards to that and how it affected Ella's life. Take a listen.
There's another sister by the name of Montesa, and she was the one that when Ella stopped taking her medicine because they were in the same state, she was the one that took and went before a magistrate and got her involuntarily committed, trying to get her help several times.
That's like a Baker Act, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so, yeah, Montesa, another sister that she was very close with. Montesa did all the work as far as having her committed, and then when she would do that, she wasn't able to take calls and keep it going. So she would give them my information to talk to me about what's going on and what they're going to do. So they would call and tell me, this is what we're going to do. And the first time she was put in the hospital, we were told they were not going to just release her, just let her go, that there would be a family meeting with the doctor to discuss what needs to be done. And the next thing we know, she was released. There was a neighbor. She lived on her own for years. She was able to pay her bills and be normal. And there was a guy neighbor that she was friends with. He would give her, when we moved from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, he took over giving her rides to the store and making sure she got the groceries and things she needed. So they became close. So when she was released from the hospital, he took her in. She would not stay in her apartment because her illness, it had her off balance. So
can you tell me what she suffered from?
I was told paranoid schizophrenia. Okay. And so she wouldn't stay in her apartment, and he was scared for her safety, so he would try to keep her with him, talk to her, make sure she ate, make sure she bathed, and just try to keep her safe as much as he could, because she would walk. She would just leave and walk and wander all around. Okay. And so I would try to, whenever he would have her, he would call and he would let me speak to her, and I would tell her, you need to go back to the hospital and get back on your medicine. And she would always say, I don't need any medication. I don't know why you guys think I'm crazy. And, I would just try to encourage her and help her. It didn't work. Okay. So she was put in the hospital a second time, and she was kept a little longer, and she went before a judge that, from what the doctors told me, because she was not suicidal, they could not just keep her, and she was her own guardian, I believe that's how they put it, and so they couldn't keep her. She was released again, and that same neighbor had got her, kept her, was keeping in touch with us, and we just didn't know what to do. We just didn't. And I had told my husband at one point, I'm going to get my sister. I do not care, her mental state. I mean, because they kept saying you can't have her around the kids. She's not safe. I didn't care. I wanted to go get her, and I don't know what I was going to do. Just keep her with me and just try to help her. I did not know, and I didn't act on what I felt, and I listened to everybody else, and she ended up being murdered, and I should have just went and got her.
The one thing that families battle with, especially when they have a missing person, or in this case a loved one who was murdered, is there is this guilt that, I think they call it survivor's guilt, or the things that we could have done differently, or I should have done this and I should have done that. And you can hear that with Melissa. She mentioned to me several times in our interview that she wished that there was more that she could do. And, I just want to take a minute to say that, you know, you can obviously see that Ella was cared for and loved by her family. They did everything they could to try to help her. What happened to Ella was an individual, a monster, decided to take Ella away from her family and subsequently murder her. And I think that, again, and I try to tell this to families too, is that, hindsight, it's always 2020, but at the end of the day, the reason that people are not with us is because of the individuals that are responsible for the actual deed. And I think that's how this is in this case. And I just want to say, families are so candid when they talk, and I firmly believe that Ella's family did everything they could to try and help her, and that we need to focus on the real person responsible, and that's the person who murdered Ella. In our next segment, we're going to discuss exactly that, how the family found out, the moments that led up to them finding out, and then, of course, the investigation or lack thereof in Ella Crawley's case. Take a listen.
The night or day of the murder, that night, the police had called my sister to come and pick my sister up from this gas station where she was causing a problem. My sister and her husband go get her, and she said she offered her, what do you want to do? And she says, take me to Hayward's. So she said, are you sure Hayward is going to let you in? And she's, oh yeah, we've talked. So she took her to Hayward's, and that's where she left her. Hayward told me he seen her knocking, but it was so late, and he was just tired of her pretty much. He didn't let her in, and that she left at some point, and sometime later she was murdered.
Who finds her? How do they find her?
Okay. A friend of hers said that she went to buy cigarettes very early in the morning. Her and her son were walking. The one store they went to was closed, so they went someplace else that led them to this path at the park, through the park. And she said as they're walking up, she sees something laying out there in the little pathway, and as they get closer, she said she realized it was her friend Ella. So she ran up to her, and by this time other people were gathering around, and they tell her, do not touch the body. She said my sister had no clothes on from the bottom down, and she took off her jacket to lay over her, took a shirt or something to lay over her, and people were saying, don't do that, don't touch nothing. And she is the one. She said, she told me that there was a van parked literally right there, and there were some Mexicans in there. And she said the Mexican guy got out and said, is she dead? And she said she started screaming, somebody call 911, somebody get a paramedic here. And she said that they hurried up and left. There was another guy that I was told slept on the church step, which is not far from where her body was found. And they said that I think she said that he was already there or came up shortly after she got there and started saying, I know that's not my friend. Is she dead? What's going on? But anyway, yeah, her friend found her and called an ambulance. My sister called me later and told me that she was found in the park, and she thinks somebody beat her up. She didn't know the extent of anything.
So we have a crime scene. We have several stories about who was all there, people involved. The white van is something particular that, for me, that sticks out, and we'll get to that in a bit, with the Mexican gentleman that was in there. But I want to touch base real quick with when somebody happens onto a scene and there's somebody there, human nature takes over, and our reaction is to do what we can, especially with, you want to be dignified in how that Ella was found. Of course, it's just terrible. So our human nature reaction is to, cover up an individual. And those are the things that you have to worry about from a forensic standpoint, is you don't want to, mess with the crime scene, that you could deteriorate any evidence or destroy any evidence that may be there. What is troubling, and we're going to hear here in this next segment, what's troubling is the lack of action that law enforcement took with searching for some of Ella's belongings. Obviously, she had no bottoms on, and we're going to hear in this next segment what the family was doing to try to find out what was going on, and how they felt that law enforcement was lacking in this area in the investigation.
No underwear, no shorts, no pants.
Okay. Did you find out where the clothes were in respect to where she was found?
Never found where the items were. I even went there looking, because when I went there, I realized, wow, here's a little creek right here. What if her stuff is over in there? I feel like they did not properly, the police, do what they were supposed to do from jump. Okay, so I'm calling myself searching, me and my son, and then we're playing detective. We're going around and we're asking everybody in the area, what did you see? What do you know? We're even paying some people. But no, they were never found. Her stuff was never found. Then we were even told at one point by a police officer that he was told she was known to walk around like that, and no, that was not acceptable to me. And I highly doubt she was walking around like that.
In retrospect to where she was found, you said her purse and all that stuff was far away, like.
It was if you could do the Google map thing and look at the area, like right across the street there's some apartments, and like on the side, kind of in the back of the apartments, is a church. Okay, well, there's a sidewalk right there. That's where her shoes and some bag that she carried was dropped or left right there. All right, her body was found directly across the street over into the park area, and they're not far from one another on that little path area. And they say that she was beaten. Her head was on the side, had a big gash. She was strangled. They ruled out rape. They told us she wasn't raped. I still don't believe that one.
There's a couple of things that I want to unpack first. So when it comes to the possibility of there possibly had been a sexual component to Ella Crawley's case, look, we heard in that last clip that a rape kit was done, and the medical examiner ruled out rape. That doesn't mean that the offender wasn't trying to do that. It's very rare that you find a homicide. It's not rare, but you have a homicide victim who doesn't have any pants on, underwear, bottoms. So we can surmise, or we can speculate that that could have been a possibility, that Ella, according to the way things were laid out, her purse and her shoes were in one area of this park, and where they found her, you're able to possibly surmise that an attack was trying to take place, and she fled, and unfortunately met her demise that way. So that's just something that is quite frankly a great possibility. So I want to get to the fact, again, this happened May of 2020. And, this was at a park where a lot of homeless people congregated and slept. There was the church across the street. Ella, had some, I want to say, acquaintances that she had. One of the main aspects of this case was, and I talked to Ella's brother-in-law, Melissa's husband, about this, is that there was this sense, this immediate belief that, Ella was with somebody or dating somebody, and, so opinions, according to the family, opinions were made by law enforcement, and they were of a certain mindset, which probably could have hindered the investigation. The white van with there were, I guess, several Mexican gentlemen in this white van when Ella was found. Now, the family did say that there were several people who volunteered or gave DNA samples. Now, the driver of this white van did give a sample, and the DNA excluded him. However, they did not get DNA from the other three individuals that were possibly in this van. There was trace evidence found on Ella Crawley that leads investigators to believe that there is a male offender. They know that much. However, again, if you're going to take DNA from one person in a specific group of people, you want to get the DNA from all of them. So I think that was something that that was missed by law enforcement. Finally, talking about how Ella was murdered, she had some blunt force trauma to the head, and she was strangled, and so hence the homicide determination. But what hasn't really been released is the fact that she had a fractured pelvis and a lot of other injuries. So this was a very violent homicide. And, the grim truth about Ella Crawley's case is you find that in these cases too, stigmas can really be disabling a little bit, where you have someone who has mental health issues, she's homeless, and these things seem to be obstacles for law enforcement. Law enforcement sometimes gets an idea in their head that this person lived a certain subjective lifestyle, or be that as it may, it did not, whether this wasn't a contributing factor to what happened to Ella. Somebody took her life in a brutal, horrific fashion, and that individual needs to pay. I tried reaching out to the detectives in this case, and it was difficult, to say the least. I sent some emails. I tried phone calling the lead detective. I didn't really get a response that way. I did inquire about the reward, if there was a reward for information regarding her homicide. And what I found out was there was some misinformation with that as well. There is a reward for Ella Crawley's homicide case. I talked to a wonderful gentleman by the name of Rich with Crime Stoppers in North Carolina, and they told me at the time of the recording, there currently is a $5,000 reward for any information related to the Ella Crawley homicide investigation. If you have this information, please, you need to come forward. If you need to remain anonymous, you can do so. I urge anyone with information about Ella's case to please contact the Winston-Salem Police Department at 336-773-7700. Again, that's 336-773-7700. You can also call Crime Stoppers at 336-727-2800. That's 336-727-2800. As always, you can remain anonymous. I want to take the time to thank Melissa and her husband for reaching out to me and discussing this horrific crime. It was not easy for them, and something has to be done here. As we cover these cases, we need your help. We're asking for your help in sharing this information, getting it out there to the public, and hopefully that we can generate leads to bring the animal responsible for this to justice, and so that he can be judged, and we can get some peace for this family. I also want to thank Crime Stoppers of North Carolina, who were fantastic in getting back to me and discussing things with me. I got a warm reception from them. I was not particularly pleased with Winston-Salem. They did respond to my email rather quickly, but I didn't find them very helpful. At first, I had to keep asking questions over and over again because when I was looking for the reward, I was told it was in several news articles, which I couldn't find one. But again, I want to thank the Crime Stoppers there in North Carolina. They were fantastic, and especially Rich, who was awesome and helped me out. Before we close out this episode, at the time of this recording, we are doing a forum for the missing. And it can also be about, we also have several organizations that have murdered victims, Justice for Will and April, the World of the Missing, and the Missing East Texas State and Beyond are all sponsoring this forum for the missing. If you're interested in wanting to enact change regarding the missing or the murdered, please, if you're interested in attending this virtual forum, email me, stevestone@thegrimmtruth.com. Again, it's stevestone@thegrimmtruth.com. Or you can email theworldofthemissing@gmail.com. We want to bring about change for the missing and for the murdered, and we need your help to do it. If you want to have change, the best way to do it is not just talk about it, but be about it, and that would be a wonderful thing to do. So email us, and we will get in touch with you on when the forum will take place. That's going to do it for this episode of the Grimm Truth Podcast, Murdered and Missed. Again, I want to thank the family of Ella Crawley, Crime Stoppers, World of the Missing for the case, and thank you guys for watching. Until next time, let's continue to be a voice for the voiceless in search of the truth. I'm Steve Stone, and this has been the Grimm Truth Podcast.